Hello and welcome to this video exploring some data visualizations about the spread of coronavirus. All of the data in this video come from the World Health Organization, and we're recording this on March the 13th, so we have data from January the 20th up until March the 12th. Now this first chart is going to show the number of infections, which are on the vertical axes, going from 0 up until 125,000 at the top there. The first line, we've got the world total number of infections. Blue line is the number of infections in China, and the yellow line is the number of infections around the rest of the world, so outside of China. What we can see from this chart is that the blue and the red line are mirroring each other for most of this chart up until about late February. At which point the number of infections in China, so the blue line, levels off and it stops rising so steeply. And around the same time, the yellow line, the number of infections around the rest of the world, starts to increase. And you can see that that upward curve at the end of the red line is mirroring the upward curve in the number of infections around the rest of the world. So that's the first chart we're going to look at. Got a few more charts to explore today. So you can see there currently on March the 12th, 125,000 cases worldwide. This next chart is going to look specifically at countries outside of China. So we've seen that recently the number of infections has increased around the rest of the world, but it's kind of leveled off in China, and they've brought that under control with less infections being detected. Okay, this next chart is looking at the number of infections, and it's going to focus on specific countries outside of China. So the first country we're looking at is Italy, the red line. Currently it has the highest number of infections anywhere in the world other than China. And you've got Iran, South Korea, France, Spain, and lastly Germany on there as well. So we can see that the shift in the number of cases around the world, the second country to really have a big number of cases was South Korea. You can see that the yellow line starts to level off towards the end, so the number of cases isn't rising so quickly as it was, whereas the European countries and also Iran are still on the increase from the look of those curves. Okay, let's head over to the next chart. And this is also going to focus on specific countries. So we can see from that last chart that a lot of the new cases are occurring in Europe, in European countries. So we've got another chart here, which is also going to show some European countries, but it's going to add a few more. It's purely focusing on Europe. So we'll just wait for that chart to construct. You can see the number of infections. We're also focusing on a shorter time period here, so we can get a bit more detail on the data. So it's starting from February 21st up until March 12th, which is when the number of cases in Europe started to increase. So you can see Italy there has that strong upward curve, and the worrying thing is that also France, Spain, Germany, Switzerland, and Denmark are also starting that upward trend as well. Okay, the next chart is the infection rate. So whereas the first three charts we looked at are the number of cases, which is only going to increase, the infection rate is going to show how many cases are being added each day. Okay, so this chart here is going to look at around the whole world. So we're going to look at the world, we're going to look at China alone, and we're going to look at the rest of the world outside China, see how the infection rate has changed over time. So again, we're going right back to the earliest World Health Organization data in January up until March the 12th. You can see from this chart that the red and the blue line are mirroring each other throughout the first half of the chart, because pretty much all of the cases were in China at that time. That very big spike in the middle on February 17th, there were about 15 to 20,000 cases added in one day. Now that is a correction. It's not a reflection of reality. It wasn't just a really bad day. It was when the way that coronavirus cases were measured changed. So the number of cases in China were kind of brought in line with a consistent way of detecting and registering cases. After that, we can see that the number of new cases each day in China, the blue line, tails off, so less new cases occurring in China each day, whereas the yellow line, the rest of the world, starts to increase. So we're getting a lot more new cases every day around the rest of the world, and the red line is now mirroring the yellow line. Okay, so you can see on that last day there, March the 12th, we've got about 6,700 new cases which are occurring outside of China in one day. So this next graph is also going to look at the number of new infections per day, and this time it's going to focus on the countries outside China once more. Okay, so we've got new cases per day going from 0 at the bottom to 2,500 at the top. So the country with the current highest infection rate is Italy. So there's a lot of fluctuation in these kinds of charts because they are measured daily. So just because there's an upwards peak and then a downwards peak, the important thing is to look at the overall trend, the overall curve, which is gradually going up. It's almost becoming a kind of an exponential curve, but that at some point will level out. So we can see that the same countries we looked at before, the number of incidences per day is going up, whereas with South Korea, the yellow line, you can see that it peaks with 813 in one day, and then since then, the number of cases per day have come down. So it's almost as if the South Korea, the number of cases being detected has had its peak, and now it's being brought under control to some extent. Okay, so the last chart we're going to look at is infection rates in Europe. So we're going to focus on a few more countries again, focusing on Europe and looking at the number of cases per day. And we're just looking at data from February 21st up until March the 12th. So you can see the number of new cases per day, again going from 0 at the bottom to 2,500 at the top. And the first country we're going to have on this chart, again, is going to be Italy, because it has the highest rate of new incidences or new cases of coronavirus being discovered. So we've got Italy, France, Spain, Germany. Germany doesn't seem to have the same gradual upwards trend, but it's very difficult to tell from this kind of data because it fluctuates so much on a daily basis. And a very important thing to remember is that the number of cases being detected is going to depend on the number of people being tested. So that's a very, very important piece of information to also consider, which we need to look at a little bit more in the future. So how much testing is actually taking place, and how well do these numbers reflect the actual number of cases that are in the population? It's very difficult to tell that, and it depends on the healthcare system and the resources available in each country. So just a little overview of some of the graphs we looked at today. Come back for more. We're going to be looking at more information. So these data visualizations are all done by information.com. You can go there to find out more. Bye-bye.